Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker-Geist and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process in discussions between the authors, narrators, producers, and post-production teams that bring them all together, as well as guests who have listened to the audiobooks and have questions for the creative teams. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Hello, I'm Becky Parker-Geist. I am the host of the Audiobook Connection podcast, Behind the Scenes with the Creative Teams. I'm also president of Bay Area Independent Publishers Association and the CEO and founder of Pro Audio Voices and Amplify Audiobooks, providing audiobook and podcasting production, distribution, and marketing. And today I have with me Katiedid Langrock, who is the author of For Fuck's Sake, Ask Your Dad, the audiobook. And I'm excited to hear more about the process. And so let's just get started right off. So hi, Katie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. So tell me and our audience a little bit more about the thought behind the book. Like what's the intention?
Yes. I say it was the easiest researched book in the history of all books. So I have it in front. I'll just, for anyone that's seeing it physically, the physical book. It was very easy to come up with For Fuck's Sake, Ask Your Dad. It's a picture book, but for adults, right? So it looks like a children's book in the way that it's packaged, and the cadence in which it's spoken and the rhyme and meter is all very children's book, but very much so for an adult. And the cover of it is a mom sitting on the toilet as the child gleefully bashes into the bathroom. And that's a personal experience I've had many times. You're like, you want past dad to come to me to ask for a snack. I'm not the right person to ask for right now. I'm a little busy.
You're right. Yeah, that's great. So is this your first book or have you been, have you got other titles as well?
It is the first book in this style for sure. My career has been mostly in writing television, and I don't know if it's ironically or not ironically, mostly writing children's television. So I am well versed in this space. This is not a children's book, I always need to say. So I have a book that's a very playful take on pregnancy book. They're always comedy. They're always meant to be funny. They're meant to relate to you in a way of like, hey, this is an honest truth, but with love and humor behind it. But playing in this space of a picture book for adults was new and a lot of fun.
Yeah. So did you come into the TV, children's writing and producing, did you come into that after already having started writing, or was it the other way around?
With writing for children's television?
Yeah.
I went to college for short story writing and then had the very typical LA story of moving out there with $86 to my name and no connections and just like hoping with some fingers crossed that things will work out, and very miraculously they did. I always knew I wanted to write for children. I think it's a really big responsibility. I think it's actually, even if you're writing Paw Patrol, like it's a beautiful offering to kids to give them a reflection of themselves in a way that's fun and silly, but also very empathetic. So I've been very, very lucky and very charmed. And in the space of trying to work my way up to that, I had a internationally syndicated humor column that got picked up beforehand and was just sort of always dabbling. I mean, writers write, right? It's like we like to play in all sorts of spaces. And the extremely talented illustrator that did the physical book, she was someone that I worked with as a children's television writer where she was on the artist side. And so that friendship kind of lent itself to just wanting to do other side exploratory projects together. And because it's fun to have fun working with artists, man. It's great.
That's awesome. Tell us a little bit about some of the projects that you've worked on in terms of, TV, film.
Sure. So in the TV space, I've written for Paw Patrol. I was kind of the head writer, story editor on Hello Kitty, Super Style. I've written for Sesame Street's Mecha Builders, Barbie, a whole bunch. Disney Junior has a new show out called Robo Gobo. I got to write on a lot of things. Project MC Squared was kind of the first baby. I worked for a toy company and was in charge of story and world creation for that toy company called MGA Entertainment, which now their big claim to fame is their LOL surprise dolls. But so it was my job to kind of create the space and figure out the entertainment for all of these. It was a great gig.
So is that working mostly collaboratively with other writers or mostly on your own?
At MGA Entertainment, it was mostly working collaboratively with the design team, which was fun. They're like, I've got, here's a drawing of a doll or of a figure. What personality would give, what world would they live in? And then in the branching out farther, when we actually then finally get into the TV space or movie space, then it's having a full team of writers. And the writer's room is probably my favorite place on earth to sit and exist.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit. A lot of, most of us don't have a glimpse into that realm. So share a little bit of what that's like. I know a lot of writers who are very sensitive about their own words and have a lot of, not good at, killing the babies or killing the, your favorites, your darlings, that's what it is, really struggle with that. And others that do co-write. So I think, I'd love to hear more about what that was like for you and sort of generally what that vibe is like in the writer's room.
Yeah, my pleasure. It is a totally different experience, right? And I have written books, so not published, and I've written a lot of TV, and it could not be farther apart. You absolutely have to learn to say, I'm not precious, to stop being precious about your contributions, because your feelings will get hurt very fast and constantly. And no one starts that way, right? In the beginning, of course, you're precious about your words and your ideas, and you want to be accepted and taken seriously and validated for your creative contributions. What's interesting about writing television is that you're on such a strict schedule that you have to get used to very quickly handing in work that you're not proud of, right? Like work where you're like, I am so much better than this, but it's due. And that is a hard thing to wrap your head around. But once you get used to handing in stuff you're not proud of, the writer's room in itself kind of becomes a much more active playground to be in, because that we just got to fire stuff out, and you have a room of people who sometimes are all the funniest people you've ever met in your life, and everyone's firing out ideas, and then usually people get around lunchtime a little slap happy and wonky, and things are thrown out that you will never use and hope no one ever took a picture of written on the whiteboard. It's like, that's not going to happen. And then you bring it back around, and it's such a dynamic creative process. And yeah, as a writer, I enjoy my solitude. I like my time alone. I like just looking out the window, thinking about things. But to get to play in both spaces, where then you bring it in and you light it on fire with 1,000 other people that have their own little tiny flames. It's such you leave buzzing. You leave, it's like, who needs drugs when you've got a writer's room? You're just buzzed out. You're just so jazzed and energized from the experience. It's wonderful. I love it.
Yeah. Now, tell us a little bit about your background, before you entered this realm. So you had the intention, obviously, because you went to college, in a writing program, entered into a writing program. Were you always attracted to writing from the time you were really young, or when did that interest grow?
I love this question because I want to always salute my 6th grade teacher. I had in 5th grade was a terrible year for me as a kid. I bullied and I lost all my friends. It was just, I remember being you're 10, 11 at that age. And I was like, I'm giving up on school. Who needs it? I won't get an education. My parents were like, oh, we're going to stick around a little bit longer before we completely give up. And I had all these dreams of, just living like the boxcar children and giving up on education altogether. And then in 6th grade, I had this teacher named Mr. Patrick. And in the beginning of the school year, he would give us tests and homework. And I would instead write stories about a girl who refused to take the test and handed him 0 questions answered, but the story on the back about this rebellious child that was saying no. And, when he took me aside one day and he said, here's the deal. You're failing 6th grade, but I see that you write. And I'll make a deal with you. Every single day that you come to me, you have to start it. You have to be the catalyst for it. But you come to me and say, I don't want to do this homework, or I don't want to take this test. Give me a creative writing assignment that's like adjacent to it. So instead of just reading this chapter and answering the essay questions, I got to write a short story about Napoleon. I got to write a short story about Greek gods, like whatever it was. The shows I knew what I was talking about, but it had a creative edge to it. He's like, I'll give you that instead. You get your own special homework. And he goes, the first time that you do not bring it in, though, if I sign it to you and you don't bring me that, the deal's off. And I did it all year. And it was like the greatest gift that any teacher could give a kid. Because I was like, oh, I didn't know I was a writer. I was angry. I didn't know I wrote. And so all year I just had this fostering of this like creative energy. And then it wound up being an amazing year. I built this whole great group of friends, and I like all these like wonderful, beautiful things happened in the midst of being offered this really great gift of a very compassionate teacher who just kind of saw a kid that was hurting and channeled it into a really beautiful way.
That is amazing.
I know.
I mean, a truly great teacher who cares. Life-changing.
Life-changing. Life-changing.
That is so beautiful. I love that. Man.
I know. I know. I don't know where he is, but man, Mr. Patrick, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're a parent as well. And so when did that happen in your overall sort of writing? Were you already engaged in developing children's programming before you had your own kids?
Yeah. What's interesting about that is the earliest memory I had is wanting to be a mom. I knew that was something I personally was not going to put off or have it be debatable. It was like very built into my system. And when I moved out to LA at 22, I didn't know like any moms that were working. And so anytime I met someone who was in the industry who was a parent, I immediately was like, hi, nice to meet you. I would like to be able to do that. How did you make that work? And it was really interesting because everybody that I met really tended to have children quite late and really needed to establish their career before they had kids, if they decided to have kids. And when my husband and I decided it was time, I had been working for the toy company. I had been a developer of children's programming and of these worlds and of these characters, and been on the executive development side. But I hadn't, to a full enough degree where I could make a career out of it, transitioned to just being a full-time writer. So not exec development, but just writing it. And development and executive stuff was super fun, but I knew I wanted to do both. And the dream was the writing side exclusively. And so it felt like a real loss of a dream when I was like, okay, I guess I didn't make it in time, but here's my personal timeline of when I want to start having children, and I'm not willing to put it off for the career. And isn't that sad that I got really close, but I didn't make it. And at the time, after I had my son, I was the first person that I knew that made it afterwards. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there, but I had never run into them. And so it always kind of felt miraculous that it wasn't something I had to just give up on, but still kind of came to fruition. I felt very lucky. I had a lot of very beautiful women along the way who were my bosses, who just kind of got it and understood hours and understood motherhood and understood, just kind of rooted for me and helped that along.
Yeah. It reminds me so much of a story I just have to share then. So after I got my MFA in acting, I got married right away and we had kids. So I had kids in my early 20s, and most of my friends who were in that program went off to LA and, got established in their careers, and they were writing for TV series and they were producing and they were, performing in films, and we had this reunion, and so we got together, and I was all, grass is greener on the other side, right? Looking at, wow, we had started a theater company at that point, so we were doing some production work, but, looking at what they were up to, and I was like, oh, you guys are, doing such amazing things. And they were like, every one of them, like, oh, I can't wait to get out of the industry. I really want to have kids. You are so lucky to have family. And I was like, wow, that is really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
It helped me to process that experience that I was having of like feeling like I'd made a choice where I had to put off my career. And in fact, I didn't really put it off. I just took it in a different direction. Right. So
yeah. No, I understand that completely.
Yeah. And so did you find that then when you did have your child, did it feel like that made a dramatic difference in your writing and in your work at that point?
Yes. I don't think I picked up on it immediately. I had I've moved out of LA a couple of years before COVID, but when I was still living in Los Angeles, I was part of a writers group that was headed up by this very well-established sitcom writer, and it's kind of this like old grandpa in the industry. And he, when I got pregnant, he was like, "This is going to change the way you write, and you're going to be such a better writer because of it." And I was like, "Nonsense!" Like I was like, "That doesn't make any sense." And he's like, "Of course it does. You're going to have this whole other experience and understanding of life." He's like, "Your empathy is going to grow. Like all these different just perspectives are going to change in you." And he's like, and I think it's because I'd internalized so much prejudice against working women moms in the Hollywood industry that I was like, this is only a bad thing. Like this is only a negative point in my direction. And he was like, anyone who's smart knows that it's a huge plus in your direction because it will so dramatically expand your horizons and your understanding. And so it did. I think it took me a minute. And in the stuff I was writing, certainly in the very beginning, was very, it's going to sound funny coming from this book, but it was very kind of harsh sort of comedy that didn't have much of that softness to it because I think I was still trying to prove that I had it. For Fuck's Sake, Ask Your Dad has it's littered in curse words, but it is a deeply kind book and is a clearly very loving book. It just like is owning that exasperation that we can feel. We're like, hey, like, okay, I need a second.
I don't think anybody gets through parenthood without a lot of exasperation along the way. I just don't think it's even possible. So Katiedid, let's take a short pause. We'll come right back. I want to talk more about the audiobook. Would you like to earn more from your audiobook sales? If you're an author with an audiobook, you may have noticed that royalties from Audible especially, and other platforms as well, are frankly kinda pathetically low, disappointingly low, and unfairly low considering what it cost you in effort and resources to create it. How is it the retailers are the ones making all the money off your work and investment? As someone who started in the audiobook industry in 1981, I've found it frustrating that authors keep getting shortchanged. The good news is that Pro Audio Voices just launched Amplify Audiobooks, a direct sale audiobook platform for authors that puts you back in the driver's seat. Earn 65% of the gross sales price that you set. Compare that to the percentage of the percentage that retailers give. Run promotions on schedule whenever you want. Create coupon codes. Build community with your customers since you'll know who they are and how to contact them. Work with a caring, responsive, supportive team to help you succeed all along the way. Get help with marketing. Get paid weekly. We're helping audiobook authors who are frustrated by painfully low royalties and the barriers that prevent them from managing their own products and customers. Amplify Audiobooks is a direct sale platform that enables authors to earn much higher royalties and have way more control. We're disrupting the audiobook industry by putting authors first. Get started today at proaudiovoices.app or go to proaudiovoices.com and click on the Distribution Amplify link. Join the movement. So when you went to move forward with producing the audiobook of For Fuck's Sake, Ask Your Dad, tell us about what you were thinking, how you decided you wanted to approach it. Let's start there.
Well, we had gorgeous examples. So this book the premise for the book came very naturally, again, through lived life experience. And then my friend being the artist who was also having her first baby at the time. And so the book itself was easy to come by. And then right away, we were like, oh, you know what this book kind of reminds me of? It reminds me of Go the Fuck to Sleep, right? It's the only other book that I could think of that was a picture book for parents told like a children's book. And I was like, oh, it's similar to that. And that book exploded because Samuel L. Jackson did the audiobook for that. And how delightful is it to listen to Samuel L. Jackson doing anything, let alone reading a children's
Right.
book a picture book for adults. And I don't know Samuel L. Jackson, but I do know an incredibly talented actress named Sarah Silverman, who I had worked with previously because she acts and she writes, and she had worked with me on the show. And she does a lot of voiceover work too. So she's on Bob's Burgers, and she was Dr. Katz, and she just so many things. And so right away, I was like, it'd be really amazing if I could get Laura to read this, because she's extremely funny and just kind of knew she'd hit it out of the park. And I think she did. She did a tremendous job. She's so generous with her time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so great. So for a lot of people, trying to work with a celebrity voiceover talent is a lot more challenging, but you had an inside, you had an existing relationship. So, yeah.
I wouldn't know how to do it the other way. I just
and then I understand it was kept the promotion extended out through the family. Is that right?
Yes. So Laura's sister is Sarah Silverman. So we got a nice bump from little Twitter, nice comments about our book and recommending the book and audiobook. So that was lovely. We'll take it. Take it, Sarah. Thanks.
Right. And sounds like Kirkus Review gave you a good review. You want to tell us about that?
Kirkus Review gave us a beautiful review. Oh, now I'm going to blank on their exact quote, but it was like, oh no, I should have written down. It said something like it was a heartfelt, funny, and unforgettable book on parenting. And I was like, well, that's delightful.
That's
Kirkus.
pretty darn good. Yeah.
It's really good.
That's great. Was there anything about the process of, from your perspective as the author, about the audiobook process that either surprised you or, that you felt like, oh, wow, that's something I wasn't expecting in any way or, that just really stood out to you?
Yeah. So it's always interesting. And I don't know why I didn't expect it with the book, but I have a lot of experience writing scripts. And then the actors come in and they say your lines and you're like, that's not what I wrote. Even though, of course, exactly to the letter, it is what I wrote, but they just say it in such a different way. And sometimes it can kind of jumble your mind a little bit. And for some reason, I didn't expect it with a short little book. And it was a very similar experience where the first read through, and again, Laura is extremely talented and brought all of her talents to it, but it just sounded different than I'd expected some of the lines to be said. And so it took a minute to process it and to be like, is this actually a problem? Is this something I need to go in and say, can you fix that? Or is it just my problem because I imagined it differently? And that took a minute. And ultimately there were a few things that were like, no, can we hit that word harder? Or can we make sure that we're hitting the rhyme right there? But most of the things that just kind of gave me a slightly panicked pause in the first listening of her take, I was like, oh, actually, no, that's good. And then ultimately, I think I actually like that better. But it took a minute to wrap my head around that. And then what's different about this book too is you can get it on Audible, but also it's on YouTube, and we have it to music. And that's different than when you have a normal, lengthy novel. And the element of bringing music in was also really interesting in how it assisted in hitting certain rhymes, certain moments. And at one point, the very first time we dropped the F-bomb, it's almost like a record scratch for that moment because it's very patient. It's I love you. Okay, no, for real. And so the addition of the music to really emphasize that was also an interesting part of the process. I think it was hard too to give notes. I think because this is a different process. It was someone I'd worked with before in a different capacity, and is of course like a compensation deal, but there was this dynamic of like, I'm not the talent here. I'm not the actress. I don't actually know this. And so to give a note in that space was a new place to navigate for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So a couple questions. One is the music that was added, was that composed for it, or were you able to source music that just was a really good fit?
We were able to source music that was just a really good fit. We had looked into it, and ultimately, I think mostly didn't fit our timeline. We wanted to be out right before Mother's Day.
Yeah, perfect.
So.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and you've highlighted something I think is really important for our listeners, because many of our listeners are authors who are considering or in the process with audiobook production, and this listening to what's been delivered and not immediately rejecting anything that doesn't sound like the way you heard it in your head the first time, allowing that door to be open to maybe it's good as it is, maybe it's even better, and just giving it that room and that openness, I think is so important, because the actor's always going to bring a whole new level and interpretation, and that is their gift that they're adding to the project. And that doesn't mean that they make every first choice right.
Right.
So that there is feedback that is almost always, required and helpful to make it the very best that it can be, because it is a collaboration. So I'm really glad you brought that up. And so tell us about what's next for you, anything that you're working on, and then also where our listeners can learn more about you and your work. So your website.
Sure. So my amazing illustrator friend and I, are now under the umbrella of Funbrella Books. So umbrella, fun in the front. And we have first of all, so we have For Fuck's Sake, Ask Your Dad. And we do have For Gosh Sakes, Ask Your Dad in a very kid-friendly version of this book, which is hilarious because kids love this book, because the pictures are all of kids like spilling things and bringing in gook and messing up mom and dad and interrupting conversations and blah, blah. And they're delighted by it. Like, this is the best. So for the non-curse word version, kids are delighted to see themselves being portrayed as the mischievous little creatures that they are. But we also do have some just sweet little children's books. And my illustrator from Michaela had a sweet little baby named Luna. So we've taken a little bit of a pause, but we've got about 3 other things that we're excited to start working on when that initial, like, oh my goodness, died down a little bit. When you can start to breathe.
Oh, this new human in my life.
Right.
Yes.
So everything changes. Got it. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So that's where you can find our stuff. And of course, on places like Amazon and under Funbrella Books. And I also have pregnancy. It's Baby Bump Bucket List is this like week by week humorous stories, funny things that you would have never thought to do to try and make pregnancy fun. Because I don't know about yours, but my pregnancies were terrible.
Yeah, they were challenging.
They're up every week, all 40 weeks, every day of all 40 weeks, the whole time. And I was like, this got to make this more fun. So just kind of to try and be a light and silly take amidst the deluge of very serious information that you're otherwise absorbing and getting possibly quite anxious about if you're like me. And I don't remember. I think there was another question.
Just if you could share your website.
Oh, yes. That was just funbrellabooks.com.
Great.
And thank you for asking.
All right. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being with me today.
It's been
really fun.
It's fun for me. I love talking about it. It's nice talking to you.
Yeah. Great. Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.